As many of you know, I am obsessed about 70s cinema, and it was just such a glorious period for music and television and, just culture all around. And then the big political changes happening in not just America, but Britain also, and pretty much the rest of the world. There's just a lot going on, and for me it was just a period that life was really starting to change. I think some of the most significant changes happened between the 60s and the 80s that we know of today in the present. And overall, I'm absolutely obsessed with the whole culture of the 70s, the music, the fashion, films like Saturday Night Fever, that style of music and appearance. I just love it. And most of my favourite films happen to be from the 70s. A lot of my favourite filmmakers began making movies in the late 60s, early 70s, and some of them are still making movies, and I just think it's excellent. So here is my mammoth list. I could not do a top 10, I couldn't even do a top 25, it had to be 50. I was actually going to do 70, 70 films from the 70s, which I have got on Letterboxd, which you can go check out now, but here is 50, and the first 10 or so is going to just be a little quick montage, because there's so much to get through in this video. I know it's going to be very long. So without further ado, everybody, here are my 50 favourite films from the 70s.
That's what people think she is, because that's the truth they want to believe. But you put her in another situation.
I'm taught too.
Change into something else. Like.
If one bite out of that, you're in big trouble. Don't you dare. Don't.
Is that all you've got to say?
Now to really dig into the list. Coming in at number 40 is Paper Moon. I simply adore this film. Set in the 20s during the Great Depression, we follow a conman Moses who promises to take young Addie to her auntie's house when visiting her mother's grave. The result is one of the greatest adult-child relationships on screen. Playing an obvious step in of a father figure and parent in general, the relationship begins with disliking one another, and then affection begins to grow. Thanks to the great performances, you can feel the chemistry between the actors, and as a comedy, it is one of the sweetest and heartfelt I have come across. It is a love letter to the sort of comedies you would see in the 20s and 30s, and for that, its blend of humour and drama works to great effect. Number 39, Eraserhead. I think the only thing you can say when you're done with this film is, what the fuck did I just watch? David Lynch's Nightmare is truly one of the most bizarre and terrifying films of the 70s. Heck, it's even one of the weirdest things ever conceived anywhere at any time. As a post-apocalyptic and dystopian nightmare, it certainly is open to your interpretation. Lynch has claimed himself that the film was trying to capture his fear of parenthood, which is an obvious theme throughout, but there's so much more going on. Taking 5 years to make, this is ultimately his project. Written, produced, directed, edited, and composed by Lynch, this is definitely a unique film that is essential viewing for filmgoers. 38. The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant. Rainer Werner Fassbinder is known for his great human dramas that are often painful to watch. This one is no exception as it delves into the life and emotions of aging fashion designer Petra. Staying in the confines of her home, we are quite literally given a sense of entrapment. Petra tries grabbing onto youth and beauty, and the film delves into her love affairs, vanity, selfishness and anguish. Few films manage to capture a portrait of a person in such a detailed and relentless way as this one does, and for that it makes its place on my list.
Now you listen here, he's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy, now go away!
It isn't funny because it crudely mocks religion. It is funny because it enters the realm of absurdist humour while having a critical look at the world. Life of Brian for its time was a very audacious film to make, and it would even be daring if it was made today. The result is simply one of the funniest films ever made. It is a satire with substance, tackling ideas of religion and social structure. Furthermore, there are moments of pure slapstick, adding to the frantic nature of the film. This film will never fail to make me laugh.
Oh, no! Sit down! Sit down!
36. Halloween. To me, Halloween is a minimalist horror film. The soundtrack is basic, there aren't many characters, and the plot is simple. A boy was committed to a mental institute after killing someone, and years later breaks out. We're not really given any motive, and for some reason it works. It adds so much mystery to everything. And this is all helped thanks to the great camera work, lighting, and genuine tension. Michael Myers is not a monster, demon, or ghost, but a person. I dare use the word realism here, due to the fact that there are no superpowers or unnatural strengths. Simply a man with a knife. And for that, Halloween is one of my favourite horror films and choices of the 70s. Number 35, The Conversation. Times were certainly changing in the 70s and wiretap technology was evolving. Gene Hackman plays a surveillance expert who becomes obsessed with the recording of a conversation between two people trying to get to the nature of their conversation. As a psychological thriller, we really get into the mind of Hackman's character, witnessing his obsession and paranoia. Even today, there is talk of ethics of how people are monitored and observed moment to moment in their daily lives. This film arguably has more relevance today, where everyone has a camera and we are surrounded by CCTV cameras. Perhaps this film is a warning for the modern world, to respect privacy. Number 34, The Sting. In a way, this film is cheesy and cartoon-like, but the performances and storyline are carried so well it is genuinely fun and thrilling. Set during the Great American Depression, we follow the con men played by Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and their attempt to run a large sting operation. Again, it is a result of great chemistry between the two actors that carries this film. You root for them despite the illegal nature of what they're doing. You invest in the characters, and that's one of those essential things for film to do. And the film is also full of tricks. You constantly wonder what is being played out as a setup, and what is actually real. It is a playful and very entertaining film.
Who are you?
We are the knights who say... Ni.
No, not the knights who say nay.
The same!
Number 33, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. As I said with Life of Brian, the work of Monty Python is absolutely absurd. Sometimes you cannot tell if they're being clever and criticising things in society, or just being downright silly. I think it is a blend of both, and with the Holy Grail, you definitely get this vibe. We're set in a medieval period, and the Python group takes this opportunity to create genuine comedy based on what life might have been like at this time. I'm really taking the piss. No matter how many times I see this, it'll just keep making me laugh.
I don't know that!
Tell us about it, Janet.
Number 32, The Rocky Horror Picture Show. As a teenager, I was referred to this by a friend and fell in love with it instantly. I think within a year of discovering it, I had seen it live and watched the film at least 5 times. It is such a slice of 70s campy cult comedy that I just find irresistible. Brad and Janet get married, and after their car breaks down one stormy night, they come to a castle. It is here they meet a mad scientist, his house guests and servants. Spending the night, they discover just what goes on inside that castle. I could see how some people could be turned off by this film, but to me, it is such a bold film playing with sexuality. You have to admit Tim Curry pulls off the look like a pro. One must also consider how the film is also like a twisted take on B-movies and old horror films. After all, a large part of the film is about Dr. Frankenfurter creating life. If you're looking to give yourself over to absolute pleasure, check this one out. To the best of my knowledge, Jaws is still the only good shark movie I've seen. The cast is excellent, and Spielberg is careful not to show us the creature until far into the movie. He builds tension, and we get to know the characters before anything else. And that's what makes Jaws work so well.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I'll say this again and again, and that's that I think the shark looks awesome. I certainly wouldn't want to chance my arm in its mouth. Overall, Jaws is one of the best thrills ever made, and easily one of Spielberg's greatest works. Coming in at number 30, Manhattan. Woody Allen's Manhattan is one of his more subtle films. I see this one much more sad and dramatic than comical. Shooting in black and white, it is a mixture of showing New York as a beautiful, picturesque-like place, but at times showing how grimy and depressing it can be. I don't think any other filmmaker has made films set in New York as much as Allen has, and I think Manhattan expresses how he feels about the city the most. The performances and characters in this one are so strong you really get a feeling of the environment. This is easily one of my favourite Woody Allen films.
Your concerns are my concerns.
29. Serpico. Frank Serpico is a patrolman who goes undercover to try and reveal the corruption within the police force. Al Pacino gives one of his most dedicated performances as a cop, who perseveres through his tasks while being harassed by fellow members of the force. It's a crime film looking at just how sleazy the city of New York can be. This is among my favourite Sidney Lumet films, and it's one of the best crime thrillers of the 70s.
You gotta say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
We look at a news organisation where one of the presenters finds out that he is to be fired in 2 weeks due to lack of ratings, despite his long time working for the company. He later decides to rant about the bullshit of life and tells viewers he will kill himself next week live on television. He gets fired for this, but the news programme's ratings seem to peak. So, the news let him stay on as he continues to rant about life and society. I think it is the absolute conviction of the performance that makes watching his thought-provoking ramblings so fascinating. This is a satire of how organisations can exploit people and use them to their advantage, even at dangerous costs. It tackles the ethics and politics of the media industry, which has grown more apparent with how today's media industry runs. Sometimes calm and relaxing films like this are an absolute blessing. It isn't an action-packed thriller or deep art house movie that requires maximum concentration. The Spirit of the Beehive is nothing short of meaningful in its subtext, but the film follows so gracefully it is a delight to watch. A travelling cinema comes into a small Spanish town and plays the film Frankenstein from 1931. Anna, a 6-year-old, is horrified by this. The film follows her and her imagination. Set in 1940, the film comments on the Spanish Francoist period, which is not something I know a lot about outside the articles I've read. To me, next to political readings, the film is about childhood imagination, and I think that alone makes this a wonderful little film to watch.
Well, that's essentially how I feel about life. Full of loneliness and misery and suffering and unhappiness, and it's all over much too quickly.
This is an obvious pick for a favourite Woody Allen film that I love just a little more than Manhattan. Annie Hall is remembered for its great narration and fourth wall breaking Allen commenting on what is happening around him. You can feel that this was a personal film for Allen to make, with both filmic references and presenting the lives of these characters in the city of New York. Who can't love a self-reflexive scene like this, where Allen calls out a pseudo-intellectual at a Fellini movie?
High intensity, you understand? A hot medium.
What I wouldn't give for a large sock with horse manure in it. What do you do when you get stuck on a movie line with a guy like this behind you?
Wait a minute, why can't I give my opinion? It's a free country.
Annie Hall is one of the most charming romantic comedies that exists and remains fresh and always will. In at 25 is Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion. This is one of the more recent additions to my list, and all I can say is what a clever film this is. The premise is enough to make you seek this one out. A chief detective commits murder and deliberately leaves clues in order to get caught. It is a film about a man who's childlike in the games he plays, he's insecure, he's self-important, and seems to have a strange fetish around the whole power play of being a detective. Now, we think eventually he's gonna get caught, since it seems like that's the only logical thing to happen. However, you're constantly put on your toes and you wonder whether he'll get away with this elaborate scheme or not. In Hitchcockian fashion, director Elio Petri withholds information from us. The detective has an idea of what he is doing right from the beginning, and we can only guess what he's going to do next. For the twists and turns and very political messages, makes this film very thrilling. It also offers an excellent soundtrack by Ennio Morricone.
Ain't got no body, and nobody cares for me.
What is it that makes Young Frankenstein one of the best comedies of all time, and one of the best parody films? What it does that films like Scary Movie and the endless slew of pop culture postmodern driven dribble like Epic Movie is maintain substance. This is a film taking its plot from the story of Frankenstein, mocking it with love and admiration. Mel Brooks shows in this film a passion for the original horror films of that time, and does more than just create a silly remake, or a spoof film. Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman are relentlessly funny in this.
You take the blonde and I'll take the one in the tavern.
Oh.
Both through slapstick, visual gags and comedic pauses and dialogue, Young Frankenstein is one of the rare films that remains funny and vibrant every time you see it. And it's endlessly quotable. Number 23, The Exorcist. Creating controversy and protest, William Friedkin's The Exorcist somehow became more terrifying to me on a second viewing. As someone who isn't religious and doesn't believe in exorcisms, I still find this film chilling and downright freaky. It is any wonder that such a strong reaction in the 70s. The plot is simply about a young girl who becomes possessed for unknown reasons, and a priest tries his best to exorcise the demon from her. I think what is displayed is a manifestation of the unknown, and fear itself. Something we cannot explain, and an uncontrollable force. The sound design, dark cinematography and editing all help put you into this somber atmosphere. Truly one of the most chilling films ever made. There are so many films set in and around the Vietnam War, and The Deer Hunter is one of the finest. Some people find it overlong and the sections of the film being stretched out, but for me I think it helps put you into the character's position. War is slow. It is very slow, but it is also chaotic. The structure of the film is a before, during and after the war that our characters battle in, showing the progression. It also takes a good look at what happens to people after war. Meryl Streep, Robert De Niro, Christopher Walken, John Savage and John Cazale all give brilliant performances, making The Deer Hunter an unforgettable story.
He wants to kill me so bad he can taste it.
I'm always gonna kill him.
Attica! What are you Attica?
As the film opens up, you think you're going to get a heist movie, but this quickly evolves. Films that stay in the confines of limited space can sometimes be a challenge in terms of staying interesting, and I think Dog Day Afternoon sits among the best of its kind. Al Pacino, John Cazale and others hold up a bank hostage, which eventually spirals out of control. It eventually becomes televised, and we begin to learn secrets and motivations behind the whole scheme, as well as more personal details. Dog Day Afternoon has a great blend of action and drama that at times has you laugh, but you just can't believe how it all unfolds. While it is inspired by a similar robbery that took place in 1972, you really don't know what's going to happen next. Sidney Lumet once more proves how excellent the director he was, taking you on a rollercoaster of emotion and drama. At number 20 is The Devils. I would like to speak very vaguely about this film, as I think walking into it relatively blindly actually makes it a better experience. It is shocking, haunting, and to be frank, fucked up. Set in 17th century France, we follow a cardinal trying to influence a king to gain more power. Along that, the film delves into the dark and gritty times of the period, and the level of corruption, desperation, and insanity that went along with it. The Devils is a disturbing piece of British cinema, and I will leave it at that. 19.5 is 5 easy pieces. Just a quick note, I had 2 films in this list that I realised I didn't put in, so it's kind of a top 52 list now, so I stuck in a 0.5. I just couldn't leave these 2 films out. 5 easy pieces, everyone. What I love about this film is how calmly it moves and how subtle its approach to the subject and ideas it expresses is. This is also one of Jack Nicholson's earliest performances, and I think it is his best up to that date. We follow Bobby Dupuy, an oil rigger who revisits his family and father after many years apart due to the father's illness. It is here we learn the reasons for Bobby's distant behaviour. Now, what I think 5 Easy Pieces does that a lot of films don't is not to explain too much and leave it up to us. Usually family drama films like this have a lot of dialogue exposition to let the audience know their history. However, here, very little is said start to finish. Bobby never scared out says his feelings, but we get a sense of his emotional distance and internal struggle through body language and facial expressions. It is probably Jack Nicholson's most subtle role, and I wish more people directed him like this. Jack Nicholson is great at over the top and playing insane, but here he shows how less can be more. 5 Easy Pieces is a poignant film exploring a drifting character who also acts as a symbol of American alienation, but also of an individual scared of his own emotions. At number 19, Barry Lyndon. I think it is when I saw this in the cinema that I truly appreciated it. Seeing it 4 years earlier, I did enjoy it, but I did think it was long-winded. However, now I feel the film isn't boring at all. If it is not simply breathtaking to look at, the music and standstill performances and drama are enough to keep you interested. Barry Lyndon has a whole style and universe of its own. The actors often remain still, which is a bold directing choice, as it doesn't give actors much physical freedom. The result is that every frame of this film looks like an oil painting, and you can see photographic techniques all over it. We are told an epic story spanning many years about Barry Lyndon, and it works as a very human story. We see Lyndon encompass all the emotions that we tackle in our lives and more. The film is well known for its innovation of technology, using natural light and an impressive low aperture lens built by NASA. Barry Lyndon is an essential viewing for cinematographers and photographers. Robert Altman's film is a comment on sexuality and identity. Shelley Duvall and Sissy Spacek star in this dreamlike film that is complex and confusing on a first watch. What you do know is the film will have you hooked on its brooding atmosphere. The long lens cinematography, the washed out look, the weird art paintings and the music all create a sense of unease. Millie works at a hydrotherapy clinic and the young and new Pinky starts working there. They become friends and eventually end up living together, and it is here we see identity changing and morphing. Three Women holds up for several rewatches for its enigmatic tone. Number 17, Ali, Fear Eats the Soul. Of Fassbinder's films, this remains my favourite for the time being. It is a beautiful story of raw emotion, tackling xenophobia and intolerance head on. When an old German woman ends up falling in love with a much younger Turkish man, she is mocked by society around her. It shows what can be at stake in a situation like this, where people are scared of the unknown and the different. Fassbinder's use of framing, character positioning, and camera movement reinforce the ideas of isolation and alienation. The film was shot in just under 2 weeks, but so much thought has been put into every frame and the characters. This will always be a favourite to me as a tender story of love and hate. Like Stanley Kubrick's films, the work of Andrei Tarkovsky forces you to rewatch them. I was young and tired when I first saw Solaris and didn't care for it much. I had the pleasure of seeing it in the cinema for the Tarkovsky season that happened at a local cinema, and my opinion quickly changed. Solaris is a very slow-moving sci-fi film, and to me it works like a thriller and even a horror film. Arguably this has the pacing that Alien would go on to have before it was even made. We float through the narrative and soon we realise the film has more humanistic messages than you would expect. It tells the story of a space expedition in a place where you are alone and isolated, meaning you are left with yourself and your own demons. It is an existential piece of cinema, as many of his films are, and it is beautifully shot and compelling. I look forward to seeing this one again. Number 15, Sorcerer. In this film we are stripped down to raw and primal levels of fear. After an oil explosion in South America, 4 men from across the world are given the task of bringing nitroglycerin across the jungle. The problem is, the nitroglycerin is sensitive to motion. This is a remake of the French film Wages of Fear, which is also an exceptional film, but I seem to like this one more, which is very rare with remakes. One scene is so impressive, I'm genuinely amazed at how they could have shot this during the late 70s. This must have been a nightmare to shoot. Sorcerer constantly has you in tension with every turn and shake of the vehicle. I think it is a certainty walking into this one that you know something's gonna go wrong, but it's all a matter of when. Another thing I love about this film is the soundtrack by Tangerine Dream. This is probably their best film soundtrack work, and it really added a spacey and hypnotic tone to the film. Sorcerer is great for genuine thrills. Number 14, Stalker. With its long takes, gritty cinematography and brooding atmosphere, Stalker is one of my favourite Tarkovsky films. Like Sorcerer, what Stalker shows us is very primal. This time we look at desire and faith. A man guides 2 other men through the area called the Zone in order to find a room where wishes can be granted. To bear sanctions, the film is ultimately a manifestation of human desire. It is a dark sci-fi film full of existential questions that really has a universe of its own, and it does this with post-apocalyptic barren lands and its cinematography. Stalker is one of the best films to start with when looking at Tarkovsky's work, and is an unforgettable experience. Number 13, Mirror. At the moment I think this is my favourite Tarkovsky film. One thing I have come to realise about cinema is there are times when things are simply better felt than understood. Mirror is the key definition to this. Mirror is a film riddled with poetry, autobiographical content and symbolism, but Tarkovsky has made the film in a way that it can just wash over you without making you overthink. There are few films that have been a calm experience like this one for me, and I wish more films like this were made. In Mirror we are given a real stream of consciousness flow that is disjointed and has no direct narrative or plot. The film is like a collection of memories and thoughts. Just like the way our thought processes and existence actually works. Things are not always in a linear fashion. Mirror looks at how our minds wander and jump from one idea to another without being a mess. This is why, for me, Mirror is such a beautiful cinematic experience. Liv Ullmann plays a daughter who brings her mother, played by Ingrid Bergman, to her home. It is here the past is explored as to why they have not seen each other in over 5 years. The daughter, her disabled sister and mother are pitted in a home where real drama ensues. Ingmar Bergman is an undeniable master for how well he captures the human condition. And Autumn Sonata is a real melting pot of what happens in family relationships. The time apart, the feuds, and what happens when you conceal your feelings. It is beautiful cinematography and is easily one of my favourite Bergman films. When I first discovered this film, I immediately got the soundtrack. This is a dark, sexually charged and gripping musical set in 1931 Berlin. We follow Sally Bowles, a performer in a nightclub. In the background we have the rise of the Nazi Party. Bob Fosse is truly a genius from the few films I have seen, with a wicked use of editing. He creates parallels and juxtapositions of the singing and dancing in the Kit Kat Club to the Nazis' violent actions and persecutions. I think even if you don't like musicals, this is a brave exception. Most of the songs are performed in the club, so it is not in the realm of The Sound of Music or Mamma Mia. The strong use of editing, well-written story and unforgettable musical numbers make Cabaret a very unique experience. And now everyone, we enter my top 10. And coming in at number 10 is Chinatown. I remember first watching this film many years ago and I found it slow. I appreciated it and thought it was a good film. I am so glad I revisited it because Chinatown is slow, but it's pure suspense. Jack Nicholson plays Private Eye Joe Geddes, who is given the task by a woman to surveil her husband to see if he's having an affair. However, the case begins to unfold into the corruption of the city. From here, the film enters a tangled web of characters and we really don't know what is going on, just like Geddes. We feel his frustration as he slowly tries to learn facts. For this, the film has a much more realistic approach to what being a detective or private eye involves, certainly a lot closer than most Hollywood films. Polanski's careful direction, the tense performances and cinematography add up to one of the most suspenseful movie experiences.
Where do you want to do this?
At number 9, Alien. This is another one I'm glad I came back to because it knocked my socks off. I think when I first sat down to try and watch it, it was just too late at night and I was tired. One thing for sure is it kept me awake start to finish this time. I was so impressed with how suspenseful and genuinely haunting this film is. Ridley Scott's direction makes us feel the entrapment of the characters, adding to the fear factor. From those opening shots, the way the camera moves slowly and patiently makes you hold your breath, wondering what is going to happen. And then there is silence. It is space after all. There is a reason people today still talk about this film, and it's because it's genuinely one of the best sci-fi thrillers of all time. At 8.5 is Apocalypse Now. I don't know how this film ended up not being on the list because it's one of my favourite films of all time, let alone just the 70s. Apocalypse Now is not only a great war film, but a film about insanity. This is manifested in Willard's journey to find Colonel Kurtz, who has went insane and is currently in the Cambodian jungle, commanding his own troops. At first, this is a great film showing the vicious nature of war, and a comment on just how insane things became during the Vietnam War. The film then delves into the consciousness of our characters, and the jungle seems to overcome them. The filming of Apocalypse Now puts me in awe as to how great the quality of the film turned out. From Martin Sheen having a heart attack to typhoons destroying entire sets and film equipment, it is a miracle this film got made. The result is a haunting story of war and insanity. At number 8, All That Jazz. Once again, Bob Fosse brings to the screen a musical with a totally different edge. This is a vicious portrayal of oneself, a real autobiographical piece. Like Joe Gideon, Fosse was a choreographer who not long before making the film was working on a new show while also editing his film about the stand-up comedian Lenny Bruce. All That Jazz takes a stab at showing the pain and sweat that goes into the performing industry, but also a much more profound tone. This is a film looking at Joe Gideon, a man who fears death, works too hard, hates himself and never thinks what he has done is good enough. He's a workaholic, sexaholic, pill-popping perfectionist. It is less a musical than a film about humans, with all the songs being in the surreal mind of Joe Gideon or actually being performed. Self-reflexive, funny, dramatic, and full of terrific music, all the jazz is a real feast for the eyes.
Bye bye life.
Coming in at number 7 is Day for Night. If you love movies, this is an absolute must-see. Francois Truffaut, who at this point was in the final part of his career, made this great meta work looking at movie making. We follow a range of characters during the production, and we get insight into what happens during the process. We see breakdowns, romances, tragedy, laughter, scenes being shot over and over, and actors not even remembering their lines. Overall, it looks at the chaotic nature a production can take. There's one moment in the film that I genuinely didn't know whether the characters, who are actors, were acting for the scene or were actually talking to one another. Day for Night for me is the best movie about movies, as it takes an honest, fun and reflexive look on the magic and effort that goes into them. Number 6, The Godfather Part 2. After all, this is the greatest sequel ever made. Well, in my eyes anyway. What I love most in Part 2 of the epic crime story is its intricate parallel narrative. As we watch Michael Corleone run the family business, we are shown the story of how Don Corleone came to America as an immigrant, starting a new life for himself, and eventually earning his position in the mafia. Once again, the acting is intense, and every scene has you on edge. You wonder who will be killed, what is going to happen to Michael's family, and how a deal is going to go down. It is simply great storytelling, with careful direction by Coppola. Coming in at number 5 is Scenes from a Marriage. If you're looking for a realistic but also highly dramatic look at marriage, then this is the film for you. Ingmar Bergman showed that even in his later career he was still a master of his craft. Made for Swedish television, the film ran at 4.5 hours across 6 episodes. The theatrical release was 3 hours. I couldn't believe how vicious this film would be. We see two people go back and forth between love and hate for one another. And you sit there pitying, feeling angry, rooting for and against them. What makes the film a realistic portrait of humans is just how flawed these two people are. It makes you realise the imperfection of people and the range of emotions they can go through. Scenes from a Marriage is one of the best dissections of human relations, and an absolute essential. At number 4, The Godfather. Like Citizen Kane, this is a film of ensemble talent that on its release surprised the hell out of its audiences. Francis Ford Coppola has serious doubts if the film would be any good, adapting Mario Puzo's crime novel. Some people at the time criticised the film, saying it romanticised gangster life, which is further from the truth. In its 3-hour runtime, we managed to see the destructive nature of violence, contempt, murder, redemption, and mafia life. Anytime I watch this film, I just get totally absorbed into its universe. The monumental performances, tension, noir-like lighting, and famous musical score make The Godfather the ultimate gangster film. Genre-defining and genre-changing, and personally for me, one hell of a cinematic experience.
Who wants to bet? You want to bet? Bet $1. $1. Huh? I'll bet.
And at number 3 is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. What is crazy? According to this film, none of us really know the answer to that. It is usually based on the opinions of a society or large group of people with power and control, it seems. This was one of the major ideas brought forth in Ken Kesey's novel. Directed by Czechoslovakian director, this is one of those films that I find profoundly moving, but also funny. The characters are so vibrant and large and encompass all the emotions of the human condition. The world is a melting pot of feelings, and the performances given are some of the finest in all of cinema. With my long discussion video and mention of the film in my documentary, I have talked so much of this film on my channel, so I'll leave with saying that this is really one of the most accessible films on my list. I was 16 and only watched it because I thought it would be a comedy with Jack Nicholson in it. And by the end I was floored. Definitely check this one out if you haven't. Number 2, Taxi Driver. One question I asked myself was, what genre does Taxi Driver fall under? Thriller? Mystery and suspense? Crime? It shares traits of these genres, but ultimately runs a course of its own. It is both a dissection of a human and urban space. the urban space here being the neon-lit New York. Through the grimy streets, Travis Bickle finds himself searching for something, but even he himself isn't sure what he wants. Paul Schrader's powerfully written script and Scorsese's meticulous direction make Taxi Driver one of the most enigmatic American movies of all time. It is riddled with information and ideas scene to scene. Flowing like a dream, you're in the mind of Travis Bickle, jumping from one moment to the next without any expectation of what is to come. And even when you have seen the film several times, it still manages to feel fresh. This is what good movies should do, which is why Taxi Driver for me sits so highly. And now we come into number 1, which I am sure many people have probably guessed by now. It is A Clockwork Orange.
I've taught you much, my little droogies.
With all the films in my top 10, it is very difficult for me to put them in order properly, so try not to take it too seriously. They are great in their respective ways. A Clockwork Orange, I think, strikes a personal note with me, along as being an exhilarating and chaotic journey. We follow Alex DeLarge and his gang of grooves on their nightly doings.
How art thou, thou globby bottle of cheap, stinking chip oil?
Both the novel and the film here very quickly make you despise Alex and show us the vicious youth in an audacious and visually bold way. Within 20 minutes, the things you've already seen is absolutely nuts. Discovering this film at 16 or so, it blew my head off entirely. To that point, it was utterly the most violent and wild piece of cinema I had seen. In a sense, I lost my innocence in this moment. Okay, well, maybe not as dramatic as that, but this film certainly is one that said to me, so this is what a movie can do. Its ideas of governmental corruption, a violent and out-of-control youth hit me hard. It's a pessimistic look at society in a dystopian universe. The cinematography, set design, acting and music all create a space of its own, unlike any other. Overall, A Clockwork Orange is one of the few films that I may consider to be my absolute number 1 favourite. But then again, cinema is so diverse, it's hard to just have one favourite. But that's it everybody, thank you so much for watching this quite long video. I tried my best to keep it down as short as I could, but there is so much to say about this great decade. I mean, even in my top 50 there are a few films that went without mentioning that I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why wasn't that there. To see the extended list, just click the link here on the video and down below, and I would love to hear your thoughts on what some of your favourite films are from the 70s. Thanks again everybody for watching the videos in the 70s marathon, and stay tuned for future uploads. See you next time everyone.